Hello again, it's Alan, and you can see here that I've had to make some alterations to the original drawing so that I can fit it into the station. It is exactly the same overall size. This is the end of canopy frame that we're going to build, and if you're cutting this out by hand, there are 100 panes. If it's on a cutting machine, it's a lot easier, but I'm going to show you a different method for cutting by hand. I've split the project into 4 separate drawings. They will become the layers that will sit on top of each other. Layers 1, 2 and 3 will be cut out on sticky labels, and this will enable them to be stuck onto the acetate background. The increased width of the upright and the arch of layer 0 will mean that when layer 0 is placed on top of the other 3, it will give depth to the frames. Layer 0, which is the outer frame, will be cut out in 500-gram card, which is 0.5mm thickness, and the overall size is 268 by 95mm. We will now be using layer 1 to make all of the window frame openings, and the first thing we must do is to surround the frames and ungroup. So object, ungroup. The next part is critical. We must surround all of the window frame openings from top to bottom, and we must then object group them. This is critical, as in the later part of the project we will be doing this and moving these out of the picture. I've calculated that the first bar should start 20mm from the base of the frames, and that each bar above, 3 of them, should be 20mm apart to make it look equidistant. So the first thing is to make a 20mm box, which will tell us exactly where the bottom line will start. For the 3 lines, I've just constructed 3 lines, 1mm lines, and I'm now going to use the object, align and distribute, grid, and we have got 1 column and we've got 3 rows. We change the setting to millimeters and 20mm apart and arrange, and it will set them. If we now object group those 3 lines, we can now click and drag them into place. As the majority of window openings are 23mm wide by 20mm high, I made a box that size, then duplicated and copied 15 times. We can now surround those 15 boxes as a group, object and group. We can then move those window panes into place and carefully position them. Now we must remove 3 of the panes that are not required due to the shape of the windows underneath. So we've got to remove this one, this and this. Now make sure that the snapping tool is off. It makes this a little bit easier. We've zoomed in and we're going to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 panes. So we select, line draw, and carefully select the points where you want the window frame. And draw lines around the opening. A little bit of care needed. Once you've done that, that is 1 frame ready, apart from the node snapping tool that we will need. So draw the next one. And so on for the 3rd, 4th and 5th. Next, make sure the snapping tool is on and select nodes. Under the Select on the left-hand side, press Edit Paths by Node, and then the Center Smooth Node setting. Then click on the line that you want to move, and it will tell you where the midpoint is with the snapping tool. Then click on and just move, and it will snap into place. Repeat the same with the next one. A little bit fiddly at times. And all 5 are complete. Now, using the fill and stroke, I've filled in these 5 window panes so we can see all of the window panes that have been completed. What we now do is we surround the panes very carefully, trying to keep as closely as possible without picking anything else up. Surround, Object and Group. This time, tell it to duplicate and pull the duplicate part out. Now, using the Flip tool, this is horizontal flip, it will turn it the other way. We can then lift and place into the drawing everything in place. Now, I used this with the snapping tool on for that part because it makes it easier to match both sides together. The next thing we'll do is to remove all of the fill color. So using the Object Fill and Stroke, we can then click onto this side of the windows and just tell it to no paint. And this one, no paint. The next thing we can do is to remove these lines. And they can be deleted. What we now have to do is to remove the inner arch, and this is where it was important at the start that we highlighted the inner arch, and we can see the inner arch in the background. If we zoom in, we can then click onto that part on its own and remove. We are now left with our window frame. Now, if any of these gaps look too small, by Object on Group, we can then manipulate each of the individual panes to make the gaps bigger. But the cutting machine will cut down to 0.5 of a millimeter gap. So on a cutting machine, it would be okay, but by hand, you might need to make those a little bit bigger. We're now ready to print and cut out by hand, or to send the drawing to a cutting machine. But either way, it should be done on a sticky label, which will make it easier to stick to the acetate background. In the next part of the video, which will be part 3, I will show how to add the vertical dividers for each of these window panes. Thank you.